This is episode 6 with Mary Claire Dilks. Your challenges don't define you. However, how you choose to handle them does. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Laugh at Adversity podcast. I'm your host, Gary Savoy. Having overcome medical trauma, I've made it my mission to uncover all of the secrets to overcoming life's challenges and living a better life. Each week, I will bring you an inspiring person or message. You'll hear from some of the most inspirational people on this planet, including those who have overcome adversity firsthand. My goal is to provide you with everything you need to conquer your challenges and to turn your struggles into strengths. I've known Mary Claire for about 3 years now, and she was a huge help in my recovery from chronic pain. As a teenager suffering from chronic fatigue syndrome, she became very appreciative of the power of alternative medicine and fully understands how illness can hold us back from fulfilling our dreams and has made it her mission to help people overcome their own illnesses. Mary Claire is a licensed doctor of acupuncture and Oriental medicine in Rhode Island and also a board-certified Chinese herbalist. In this episode, we talk about her experience with chronic fatigue syndrome as a teenager and also about the direct connection between what we eat and how we feel. We also talk about what you can expect during an acupuncture treatment and some of the benefits of an acupuncture treatment. We also discuss why improving blood flow can help heal our bodies and how she uses herbs in patients' treatments. We also discuss the power behind guided meditations, the 3 prongs of health, and why it's important to make time for yourself. So without further ado, here's my interview with Mary Claire Dilks. Hi, Mary Claire. It's nice to have you on the show.
Hi, Gary.
So just to give the audience a little bit of a background, I've known you for probably 2 or 3 years, and you are an acupuncturist and herbalist, and you helped me a lot actually in my journey. You know, when I first started seeing you when I was having really bad, groin and abdominal pain, and then also you did a lot with the herbs for helping me with healing, my GI issues. So first, I just wanted to say thank you so much for everything that you did for me before we kind of get into your story.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm so happy to help people who, unfortunately, I think people come to acupuncture as one of their last stops on the road, but it's great to be able to really help people and be a catalyst in the healing.
I agree with that statement. I was definitely nervous and also sort of like a non-believer at first and didn't really know whether I should do it or not.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously it helped a significant amount in my healing. So I'm definitely glad that I tried it out and obviously thankful for all the help that you gave me.
Yeah, that's great.
So before we get into talking about, the benefits of acupuncture and kind of what it is, I'd like to talk a little bit about how you kind of got there. I know you struggled a little bit with chronic fatigue syndrome as a teenager. Could you brush up on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I was a teenager and not taking, great care of myself as many teenagers do, and, eating crappy food and not sleeping enough. And I think my negative kind of internal voice also played a part in some depression. And I think during that time, I also had been taking antibiotics for many years. And looking back at it now, I actually think that might have really sent me down this negative path of fatigue and low immunity and depression. And so I was a teenager, probably about 15, and I went to a holistic doctor. Luckily, my mom was already into holistic medicine to some degree, and so we didn't have a very long time visiting many doctors like I know a lot of people with chronic fatigue do. So we went right to a holistic doctor, and he did some testing and test my vitamins and things like that, and found I was really deficient in a lot of different things. And again, looking back, I kind of think I might have had a candida issue going on, maybe something like that also. But at any rate, so he treated me for years doing vitamin IVs and different supplements, and that's really when I started learning about food and nutrition and really learning about how it impacts how you feel.
Right.
The direct connection. And sometimes it's not an overnight connection, but, it definitely makes a big difference. So that really set me up at that point to, kind of, go forward and to be able to do all the things I wanted to do as a teenager, because I really felt held back, in many ways by my, fatigue and depression. And so it was really great to come out of that. And so then eventually I went to Europe. So this is getting back into college. I went to Europe, and kind of at that time, I really had the inspiration to give back to people who are suffering with chronic health conditions. And so I was really inspired at that point to make it some part of my career path.
Do you think that, struggling with the chronic fatigue and then being able to heal yourself through, the vitamins and the holistic approach, do you think that kind of sparked your interest in also servicing others?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, no doubt. Because I think I really felt how I literally couldn't do anything I wanted to do. I was stuck in bed, didn't have the energy to get up and, go hang out with my friends, or, I had to slow down with my involvement with sports and all kinds of things. And so I think understanding that, in the empathic part of me thought, gosh, so many people are held back by health conditions, and there have to be, so many other people in my shoes.
Right.
So it definitely inspired me to give back.
Great. So you were in Europe, did you start studying there, or what interested you to kind of start studying, acupuncture and herbalist?
Well, I think what Europe did for me was I actually went to Paris by myself once I was 21, and I took an overnight train, and I did this thing that I never thought I would be able to do. So it was more about an inspiration and motivation. Like, I can do anything in the world I really put my heart into. So once I had that, I came back and I started working at an integrative medical center in Chicago, called American Whole Health. And they started a small clinic in Chicago with multiple MDs and other practitioners, chiropractors, acupuncturists, nutritionists. There were Reiki practitioners, what else? Psychologists. I mean, the list went on, and then they ended up becoming a corporate company and spreading these centers all around the country. So it was actually kind of really cool to see just the business side of all of that. But at the center, I really learned about acupuncture and, as well as the other modalities, but really learned about acupuncture. And at that time, I was also studying philosophy, and that was actually my undergraduate degree. So I had gotten into the Eastern philosophy, and it just all kind of gelled at that point. It was like, all the paths came together, and it just seemed like this is the way to go.
So it's like a series of moments that kind of sparked your interest and helped you make that decision that you wanted to go this route.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think I love the ideas of Taoism, that everything is connected, that, elements in the earth are also present inside of our bodies, and they can make us sick. The idea is that emotions are connected to organs, and there's no differentiation between your mind and body. So all of these sort of philosophical components really sparked my curiosity. Also, the very poetic nature that Chinese medicine has really just, I just thought it was such a beautiful medicine, the way they talk about, the terrain of the body and health and things like that. So that's really where it started. And then I started having treatments and really started feeling the effects of acupuncture first, and how it really improved my energy even more. And I feel like it really affected my mood a lot, made me definitely more even. And in so many ways, I could go on and on about how much it helped me personally. And so then I started studying. At basically the next semester in school. I think I started taking my prerequisite type classes, all the bioscience classes, and then then I started looking at schools. And one of the main schools out in California actually was about to open a campus in Chicago. So it's like, once again, here I am, and here's a school just about to open. And so it was great. So that's where I started.
So it sounds like it was meant to be, and all the stars kind of aligned for you.
That's how I felt. That's how I felt often in life, I think.
So I know for me, I didn't really understand what acupuncture was. Could you explain a little bit about, the needles and maybe the meridians as well?
Sure. Well, the needles, that's definitely the thing that people think about the most when they think about acupuncture and Chinese medicine. And it's unfortunately, I think, the thing that holds a lot of people back from trying it because, let's face it, who really likes needles?
Yeah, you think it's painful.
You think it's painful, right? You think it's just like a shot or an injection. But the needles we use are all solid, and they're about as thin as a hair, and they're flexible. And they're not designed to cause any real damage. They're not designed to go into a blood vessel or anything like that. So that because of the design, it actually causes a lot less pain. So they're pretty small, and most treatments involve about 15 to 20 needles or so. They're left in during the course of a treatment, which is about 20-25 minutes. And some of the needles can be used in an area of pain or discomfort, and sometimes they're used along the meridians to serve a specific purpose. So each point actually has a purpose. Sometimes it's to clear heat or inflammation from the body, or sometimes it's to improve circulation. So that's kind of just a general idea. And let's see, the points located near an area of pain might be used to help relax a muscle or break up, connective tissue, tightness, or, if there's a muscle spasm or something like that, it might help to calm that down. So the meridians are kind of like a system, an interconnected system in our bodies, kind of like the river pathways of our bodies in a way. They provide nourishment to all of our tissues. And, there's some debate in Western medicine about what these meridians actually are. But in Chinese medicine, the thinking is that there are these pathways of circulation in our bodies that provide, like I said, the nourishment to all of your tissues. And, your meridians run from your head to your toes. So they're all over. And most of the points are located on those meridians.
Right. And those meridians, you mentioned like kind of like a river, they go across like certain organs, right? Like there are certain points that are specific to certain organs?
Exactly. Yeah. So they're all named, they're almost all named for organs. So like your liver, your spleen, your stomach, all of these meridians actually connect to the organ at some point. So they do have an effect on the organ, as well as just have the name. So sometimes I'll say, oh, it's nothing really with your Western liver, you don't have kidney disease. Sometimes if I talk about somebody's kidney, because the concepts are a little bit different in Chinese medicine. So there's a much more expanded idea of organs. And again, there's this relationship and connection between them all. So you can't really separate, one part of our bodies from another.
So is the belief of an acupuncture treatment that these needles are kind of opening up the pathways and allowing more energy and nourishment to flow through those riverways?
Yep. That's definitely one way of thinking about it. And then from a Western medical standpoint, they affect different hormone pathways and things like that. Also like the ovarian, hypothalamus pituitary axis. There's different connections they've found actually biomedically that, cause a balance in the hormones or they affect the way our bodies process cortisol, which is a big stress hormone. So there are a few different ways they can work. And then again, like I mentioned, we talked a little bit about the blood flow, but just by improving microcirculation to an area, you could really help to heal it. So, yeah.
What are some of the benefits that a person can receive from acupuncture, whether they're, dealing with chronic pain or if they're just kind of looking, to try it out?
Well, yeah, people come for all different reasons. So, like you mentioned, the chronic pain is one of the biggest ones. But insomnia, digestive problems, women come for menstruation problems, even PMS. I mean, many people think, oh, PMS, it's like something I have to have, but it's actually pathological, so we can treat it. What else? Let's see. There's, I'm sure I'm missing a lot. So depression, anxiety, that's kind of a huge area of treatment. Skin problems, I think, are better treated with herbs, but that's an area I'm really getting into treating lately. But I think herbs are a little more effective than acupuncture. But some people just come for stress reduction and stress management. And people will come to me for a series of treatments, usually 6 to 8 weekly treatments, or, either once or twice a week. And then after that, a lot of times people will come once a month for a really good balancing treatment, de-stressing treatment. I think it really helps people stay connected and aware of their bodies. I think that's one thing about acupuncture that's really important, is that it really teaches you good self-awareness, and you become really sensitive to your body over time, with continued treatments, I think. And you can feel subtle shifts and changes, and you get a better intuition of okay, maybe this isn't that good for me, or whatever. Maybe I shouldn't eat this bag of chips or whatever. I don't know. And so I think people get that awareness and just a more healthier, balanced way of living when they do that kind of monthly check-in. But they also find they get less respiratory colds, things like that. Overall, they might not be as reactive or have as bad road rage, that kind of thing. So it can work in a lot of different ways for people.
It's funny you bring those up, because I remember 2 different scenarios. So I remember, coming to visit you, and it was probably like a month or 2 since I had a visit, and I was just having, pain in my groin, which is, where the nerve damage was. And I remember feeling those needles go in, and it was almost as if there was a blockage until those needles went in, and then it felt like, there was energy or just even blood flow, I guess, just kind of, I don't know, it was like a freeing sensation, I guess. It's kind of weird to explain, but I could definitely feel it just by having a single treatment. And that probably goes into, the freeing of the blood and kind of helping, to heal the area.
Exactly. And that's what it comes down to, really, is tapping into your own body's ability to heal. And all these needles do really is to stimulate that natural intelligence, that our bodies have to heal. I think we have tremendous capacity to heal and rejuvenate ourselves. We just need to get the right input and the right signals to do that.
Right. And I think that's probably the biggest debate between Eastern and Western medicine is, using your own body and tools that you can, natural tools to heal yourself versus, prescriptions and surgeries and things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, and I remember when you talked about colds, I remember there was one time where I was actually sick, and you did that thing. It was like a spoon on the back of my neck.
Yeah.
And it actually, I remember clearing up my sinuses by the time I left, which was really cool.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, that's gua sha. It's a massage technique using a spoon or a different sort of broad-shaped object, and it can leave some marks on your back, or neck, or wherever you do it. But it has so much healing power. It just warms up the area. It gets your lymph flowing, which is so important for immunity. And the cool thing is that those little spots that, I don't know if you had this on your neck, but those little spots that come up that look kind of like a bruise or like a hickey, It's not technically a bruise. It's called petechiae, that is really just blood that's pulled out of the circulation and brought to the surface. But the cool thing is that as your liver gets rid of that blood, it releases an enzyme, and the enzyme is anti-inflammatory. So it can have a systemic anti-inflammatory effect.
Really?
Just by doing that treatment. Yeah. So it's really cool. You kind of, again, it's like tapping into your body's own ability to heal itself.
I don't know if you've done anything into cupping, but is that why like cupping seems to be a really good treatment for a lot of athletes?
Yeah, I think so. And then also, so both these things, cupping and gua sha, really improve blood flow. I know cupping improves blood flow 300 to 400%. So in an area,
wow.
So, I mean, it's remarkable. And then you can just, by improving blood flow, you're improving all of these great healing powers of our bodies. So, so I would say cupping's a great treatment too.
Yeah, it's funny too, because there's a few athletes that I follow on social media, and you see it a lot more over the past, I think, like 3 years or so, where they're posting a lot of pictures of getting, acupuncture and cupping treatments as like kind of their regular routine.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so great for, healing trauma, and every time they work out really hard, I think there's some degree of muscle trauma.
Right. Yeah.
So you're just kind of continually tapping into that healing power. But yeah, I know a lot of athletes are really into it. So it's, they use a lot of needles, though. I don't know if you've noticed that on social media with pictures of acupuncture, but they'll put 100 needles in somebody's leg. So it's a little extreme, I think, for what, I normally encounter in my practice. But
do you think it's because like a quicker recovery time, or just a different type of acupuncture that they're getting, why they're getting so many needles?
Yeah, I think it's probably just to improve their recovery time. It's just, they're going really hard and fast probably in their lives. And so the treatments are probably really equally as intense. So.
Right. You talked a little bit about, the herbs. So I was just curious, what roles do the herbs play in your practice?
Yeah, well, herbs, I use custom blended granular herbs primarily. And those are blended for a person to treat their condition. So I was talking to somebody about this earlier today who came into my office, and she had polycystic ovarian syndrome. And I was saying that, our herbal medicine doesn't treat polycystic ovarian syndrome. Our herbal medicine treats the person with that condition. So it's different in, many people. There are probably 6 different, what we call patterns of diagnosis for most conditions. And so we really have to come upon a clear diagnosis, and then we can do a treatment based on that. So the treatment is either, herbs or acupuncture or both. But so the herbs are often 1,000-year-old prescriptions. They're kind of like recipes that involve usually 5 to 12 herbs, maybe. And all the herbs have a specific function in the formula, and they all work together to treat the person. So they treat not only the symptoms, but also the root cause of the problem. And that's really the benefit of Chinese medicine, is that we really get to the cause of something rather than just treat the symptoms.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the big difference. I know from my experience anyways, is that, meeting with you and some of the other natural healing, doctors that I met with, it was, you guys focused on, healing the actual source of the issue versus treating the symptoms.
Right. Yep, exactly. And I think, again, I think symptomatic treatment can be helpful because people really want to feel better. So it's a quicker method to treat the symptoms, but you also want to think about the root cause. So you do a little bit of both usually, and that's often the way to go about it. So people aren't suffering for quite as long.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I know you can do a lot of different things with herbs, right? You can, as far as I know, you did some with pain for me. And then also when I was having a lot of GI issues, There were a couple different herb like cleanses that you did that really kind of helped heal like my GI tract too.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Herbs are really great for a lot of internal medicine conditions. Sometimes I'll give them to people for pain. But generally, I would say acupuncture tends to be more effective for pain in most cases. But I think about herbs more for internal medicine problems, and certainly for things like insomnia, skin problems, things like that.
And when you're talking about, 1,000-year-old herbs, you're not talking, the stuff that you're mixing and making is different than something that you might just buy off, the shelf at the store, right?
Right. So I think it's so important to get your products from a reputable source. That thing came out, when was it, like a year ago or something, about different supplements at like Walmart and Target that didn't even contain what the label said they were supposed to contain. You get other problems like heavy metal contaminants, pharmaceutical contaminants, things like that can show up if you buy Chinese herbs from, eBay or something.
Right.
So, and even in Chinatown, you go to a Chinatown and you have no idea what you're getting. But all the herbs that a well-trained herbalist will use are all from a reputable source that does the third-party testing to make sure you have the right species. And, again, like I said, the no contaminants. That's a big, huge thing. So we want to make sure that what we're putting into our bodies is actually going to heal us and do what we think it will, rather than cause any side effects or problems.
Right. Yeah. I don't want people to hear about all the benefits, of herbs and then be going out to, their pharmacy and trying to buy things off the shelf and have some sort of reaction.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You have to be really careful. And I think even the FDA had cracked down years ago on one of our herbs, ma huang, which is ephedra, right? They were using it, I think, in like bodybuilding or weight loss or one of those. I think it was actually weight loss, but they were using it in such high quantities that we would never, ever use in herbal medicine. But people were getting it off, from Target or whatever. And then they were getting like kidney damage and some serious problems.
Right.
But, again, it was used in a totally unsafe, incorrect way, but the FDA ended up cracking down on it and really limiting our availability to get that herb, which is unfortunate because it's really great for asthma. And it's one of the best herbs for that. So it's tricky, but yeah, so you have to be really careful.
So it's really important that you make sure, if you're going to try to go down this route, that you make sure you find a certified herbalist, right?
Exactly. So we have national board certification for Chinese herbalism. And so you can go to the website nccaom.org and you can find a list of all of the national certified herbalists and acupuncturists. But it's a special different certification for herbalism. So that's a little bit different than like Western herbalism, which doesn't really do that degree of certification. And I think Western herbalism is a little bit different too, because you can take one herb for like one thing. So it's a little bit different, almost more like Western medicine. Like, you might take, I'm trying to think of an easy example, like St. John's wort for depression, and nerve pain too, actually. That's great for nerve pain. But it's a little more specific, this for that type of thing. Instead of Chinese medicine is really this like more complex formula with all these different components. For example, I might add one herb just to say I'm treating shoulder pain or something like that, or a headache. Maybe that's more appropriate, but might bring one herb in the formula might guide the formula to the specific area of pain in the head. So whether it's a headache in the front, on the top, on the back, you might add one, different herbs for different areas, but one herb is just a guiding herb. Things like that, which I think it's kind of cool in Chinese herbalism.
Right. And I think the other important thing too is that I would assume you have to make adjustments, and there are certain ratios that the herbs that you're using, right, to kind of treat the right symptoms.
Exactly. Yep.
So we talked a lot about, obviously acupuncture and herbs, but I'd like to also get some of your insight on how someone who's dealing with anxiety or depression can kind of calm their symptoms naturally.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing people could do would be to try out meditation. I think it's been proven that meditation really changes our brains and um, our whole emotional outlook. So, if someone wants to get into that, I think that would be the first thing to try. And there are so many great programs, different apps now available. But I think even 3 to 5 minutes a day can be so helpful. It doesn't have to be like a 20, 30 minute a day thing. I would say start small and do 3 to 5 minutes of just even focusing on your breathing for 3 to 5 minutes. Like most of us can try to do that. And I think the important thing to think about with meditation is to remember not to get frustrated because it's not easy.
Right.
We're not born being able to do this. And I think our lives are getting so complicated now where our brains are thinking of millions of things at once. And to calm it down takes, it's so hard, but it takes practice. And that's why they call it a practice of meditation because, it's a practice. You just have to keep trying and you just, keep focusing on your breath. And then if you notice a thought come up, you just let it go without judgment and then move on. So yeah, meditation.
Yeah, I think it's funny that you mentioned that because I struggled with meditation when I first started. I would either, 30 seconds in, I would be having all of these thoughts and wouldn't know what to do with them and I would be judging myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it would just kind of ruin the whole practice at that time. And then the other thing too is that I would also find myself falling asleep.
Oh,
Because I'd be doing it like late at night.
right.
But I find doing it, in the morning or maybe like midday is usually best for me because it kind of helps, either start the day off right or also kind of like balance out my day.
Yeah. Yep. And I think that's really the falling asleep thing. I think that's why, it's recommended that you do sit up with a straight back when you meditate because you'll be less likely to fall asleep. But it's true.
Right. Yeah. But I agree with you. It is very difficult when you first start, and especially I remember starting with, small increments of, 3 to 5 minutes sessions when I first started.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's all good. I think even if you do that amount. One other thing that's really helpful are guided meditations. So there are different guided imagery meditations you can use that sometimes help get into it a little bit more. I don't know if you've done any of those.
So I know you talked about apps. I use Calm.
Yeah, Calm's a good one. Pause is a good one too.
Pause.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never tried that. I've tried Headspace and Calm.
Mm-hmm.
Calm was my favorite,
Mm-hmm.
and I did a lot of their guided meditations. But do you have a favorite of any of them?
Well, for guided meditations, I really like these by this woman called Belruth Naparstek. And this actually really helped me going way back. I mean, she goes way back. I was working with her stuff in the late 90s. And they're called Health Journeys. And if you go to their website, healthjourneys.com, there are numerous topics. So you could pick one for just like stress and anxiety, for example. And you could listen to that for like usually 10 to 20 minutes, depending on the different types of guided imagery meditation. And she kind of takes you through a different, imagery about where you feel safe or, different things like that. And goes through this whole thing. But she really focuses on self-care and self-love. And I think that is so important in healing, to befriend your body, instead of trying to fight against it. Like you want to work with it. And so I think that's so important for people.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think a lot of it is your perspective because when we get diagnosed with something, we kind of almost fight it. And that negative mindset doesn't really help you when you're trying to heal.
Right. Right. I agree. It doesn't help. So I think we definitely need to work with our bodies.
Right. Work with it, not against it.
Yep.
Which actually leads me into my other question too, is you talked about when you were starting to heal yourself from the chronic fatigue, diet played a significant role. So what are some steps for people to kind of start living healthier lives and finding more balance in their lives?
Well, I think there are three prongs of health when you get down to the basics, right? One teacher at some point told me this, and it's really stuck with me. The three prongs. So eat, sleep, poop, right? So we need to have balance in these three areas. These are the basics. So eat. What are we eating? Are you eating nutrient dense foods or empty calories? The most nutrient dense foods we can eat, the better. I think generally eating low carb is better, and eating complex carbs when we eat them. Protein is so important. And that was one area where I was really lacking way back when I was a teenager. But getting enough protein is so important. And then a ton of fruits and vegetables. So diet. And then, of course, limiting the amount of sugar you're having is really important. Sugar is kind of a killer. And I know it's a really hard habit for a lot of people to break. But decreasing the amount of sugar can be hugely important and helpful. Let's see. So sleeping is the other prong, and sleeping is totally underrated and undervalued in our culture. But I think we need to get enough sleep. So much happens when we sleep. Our nervous systems reset, our bodies process hormones and clear away, extra hormones and balance the whole system. So if we're not sleeping, it can cause so many problems. So really focusing on sleep, getting to bed, ideally it's like by 10, and then getting a good, 7 to 9 hours, whatever your body needs, is ideal. And then poop. So you got to make sure you're having regular elimination. And we don't talk about this enough in this culture.
Right.
But this is so important in Chinese medicine, and people always blush or often blush when they come into my office and I start talking to them about their poop. But really, you have to have a good regular bowel movement once a day to really eliminate, and it keeps your digestive system healthy. So to make sure that's happening, and to eat, according to eat what's going to help you go. Nuts, dried fruit, prunes, all that stuff. It's really important to incorporate that just to make sure you're eliminating regularly if you need a little extra help.
So it's about, the intake, and then also the sleeping to kind of help promote, healing.
Yeah.
And then also the output, I guess.
Exactly. And those are the basic markers of health, So like I said, I like to talk about poop in my practice because it tells a lot about how your body is processing the nutrients that it's taking in. It tells a lot about your general state of energy, and about, maybe how much fluid, if you're deficient in fluids, or you have too much heat in your body, or different things like that. So that's why it's really important just to pay attention, I guess. I'd say that that's one thing, like I said, that Chinese medicine really teaches us, is how to pay attention to all these different aspects of our health, so that we can find out what works for us and what promotes balance or promotes unbalance. So.
Right. Yeah. And I remember having that conversation with you, and it was uncomfortable, but at the same time, just by having that conversation, you were able to kind of diagnose a few things that were going on, which was kind of mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. Right. It's such a taboo to look at your poop, but I hate to go on and on about poop, but seriously, just look at your poop.
The other thing too was, I remember you had me stick my tongue out, and you looked at underneath my tongue, and you were able to read how stressed I was, and that was kind of fascinating too. Right.
So the tongue diagnosis is one of the ways we look at somebody and what's going on inside, and the tongue is kind of it's a map, actually. Different areas of the tongue reflect different organs. And so I look at the color of the tongue overall, the shape of the tongue. I look at how it moves, or if it doesn't move. I look at the coating, and, the color of the coating is important, and also the thickness. And then also underneath the tongue, it's really important to look at the veins that can give a lot of information about your blood flow. So it's really important to check that too. So you want them to be, the veins underneath shouldn't be very engorged and dark. They should be relatively small. But that's kind of the basic idea of the tongue diagnosis.
It's all just so fascinating to me.
Yeah. It's a totally different way of looking at our health and our bodies. One of my teachers way back in school said, it's kind of like you're learning to view the world with a new set of glasses. And it's proven true. You really think about things a lot differently. So, and even the way somebody moves, if they're really erratic in their movement or something, that'll tell me something about what's going on inside of them. So you really have to pay attention and be a good observer of people to really diagnose somebody and see how you can help them.
So it kind of goes back to the awareness that we were talking about earlier and being self-aware, but also aware of others.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So for people that, found this really interesting and would like to give acupuncture a try, where can they connect with you?
Yeah, well, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. My practice name is Emerging Energy Acupuncture. So that is the name on my Facebook page, where I share lots of great health tips. And I spend most of my time on Instagram, and that page is Emerging Energy. And I try to give good health tips and inspiration to people there, and good information about Chinese medicine as well for people who, want to learn more. Those are the main channels. My website also is emergingenergy.net. And I have a blog there, which I will periodically update with different articles, different things I'm inspired to write about when I have the extra time, which is not as often as I'd like these days, but I do what I can.
Yeah, I will make sure to include all those links in the show notes so people can get to them. But I do like some of the posts that you put on social media. They're really like thought-provoking, as far as I think you had something on heartburn and your emotions and the role that it plays with heartburn a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's so important to remember the connection of our emotions to our physical state. And that's why I'm so passionate about meditation and mindfulness and attitude, positive attitude, I should say, because, there's such a direct correlation with that and our whole well-being. So I really try to inspire people, to live a balanced way and to also practice really good self-care. I think I'm really, passionate about that too, because we really need to treat our bodies, like I said, as, our companions in this life, and listen to the cues it gives us in the form of symptoms, to say something's wrong, and then think about it for a little while and analyze it and see what you could do to change it. So I think making that time for yourself is really important, to listen and to do things to nourish yourself and your spirit. Not only nourish yourself through the foods you eat, but also, nourish your mind and emotions. So.
Right. I completely agree with all of that.
Yeah.
I have two final questions for you.
Okay.
The first is, what is your definition of adversity and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, well, adversity, to me is basically, if things aren't going your way, then you're faced with adversity, but I think sometimes adversity can be kind of like a gift. And I kind of hate to say that, but there's that Zen proverb, I think I posted not too long ago about this, that sometimes the obstacle is the path, right?
Yeah.
So you learn so much through all of your experiences, good and bad. I think, it's really important just to stay where you are, don't try to run away from your experiences or health condition. But just sit with it for a minute and try to understand the wisdom of it and kind of just keep going forward. Don't go back.
Right. I love that response. I think it's completely in alignment with, this podcast and the message that I'm trying to get across to people.
Yeah, that's great. No, I think the work you're doing is really great.
Thank you. So the final question is, what are 3 tips you can give someone who is facing adversity in their life right now?
Well, I think kind of going back to that last answer, to sit with it, to try to listen to any kind of wisdom that comes from the experience. Mm-hmm. And remember that you're not going to know kind of the true meaning until you get past it. A lot of times you have to just keep going forward. And then eventually sometimes things make sense. You can look back and say, oh yeah, okay, that was really great because, whatever. So that's all really important to getting through the adversity. And then just to stay positive, gosh, it's so cliche to say, but just if you try to keep a positive mindset, I think you won't fall into that negative thinking spiral. And do what you can to keep positive people around you and read positive, self-help books or, have good conversations with friends that are upbeat and positive. But as much as you can, just keep going forward.
So 1 was to acknowledge it, and kind of sit with it. And then 2 is to stay positive.
Yeah. And then I think the sort of between those 2 was the idea that you're not going to see the meaning of it until you get through it.
Okay. So the hidden lessons.
Yeah, exactly. And just know that there are hidden lessons and that, you're not going to see the big picture for a while, but just kind of be at peace with that,
Yeah, I love those. So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you for everything that you do, for, the inspiring being that you are, and also just your commitment to servicing others. And, every day that you're helping someone, whether it's, a chronic pain or an illness, or really anything, even like skin conditions or anything, and just kind of servicing others and helping them live better lives. So I just wanted to thank you for everything that you do.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me on this podcast. And it's really, I feel like I love going to work every day and helping people. And I feel like it's such a gift to be able to do this work. So hopefully I'll be able to do it for many, many, many more years.
I'm sure you will. Yeah, it's a great gift to be able to help give back and service other people.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this interview with Mary Claire, then make sure you head over to the show notes at laughatadversity.com/6. You'll be able to find all of the links to our site and anything that we discussed in the interview. Also, if you really enjoyed this episode, then make sure you subscribe to the podcast. And don't forget to leave a review in iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. They're so important in order to get the podcast found and to help change other people's lives.